Today on the podcast, boy, do I have a treat for you. We have our other host, RT Custer. And I want to tell you a little bit about this episode to get you excited because we really dug into what this mastermind has done for RT and why he's so passionate about taking over Fast Foundation's mastermind with his partner, Jim Carter. I am Jessica Bergio, the other host of Fast Foundation's podcast, and I'm so excited to be bringing you these episodes and sharing stories of how this mastermind has changed the lives of so many people, 350 plus to be exact, and why RT and Jim, again, like I said, are taking over and doing what they're doing, carrying on the legacy that Chris and Lori Harder started. So a little bit about RT. He grew up on a Christmas tree farm in Reading. The farm was always the side hustle for the family, and through that, he learned to be an entrepreneur from his grandfather and his parents. After getting his degree in industrial engineering from Penn State University, he moved to Fort Collins for a job with Walmart Logistics. After a couple of years, his side hustle at the time, Vortic Watches, had really taken off, and he went full-time in 2016. He now runs the company with his co-founder and has several employees. I will make a side note that they are a seven-figure business, but that's not all. RT spun off the expert team of marketers helping with Vortec to create a digital marketing agency. Shortly after, they joined forces with another agency, resulting in Carter and Custer. There, RT thrives in his role of Chief Revenue Officer. Now, Carter and Custer have taken over the Fast Foundation's mastermind and are serving entrepreneurs through mentorship and community, and now this podcast. His niche is in marketing for physical products online. He has several businesses, a girlfriend who he calls baby mama in the show and gives all the credit to, which I appreciate, two little kids, real estate investments, and more than 10 employees across all of his companies. He works hard and tries to do everything with a high level of quality and integrity, which I will completely vouch for. His drive comes from his relentless pursuit of legacy wealth for his family, as well as his desire to help others and ultimately see his team and businesses win. In this episode, we really dug into the partnership that I just mentioned with his baby mama, and how their experience together going through the mastermind really shaped and changed both of their businesses and also their relationship. How he met Chris Harder, the originator of Fast Foundation's mastermind, and how he was able to actually pay for part of Fast Foundation's, the round he was in, with a Vortic watches. You're not going to want to miss that story. And then the connection between Lewis Howes, Jim, and RT, and how all the boys kind of ended up knowing each other by way of showing up and putting themselves out there in a big, big way. So I hope you love this episode. We get a little bit into the meat and potatoes of why we created this podcast. And just like we always say, our DMs are always open. If you love this episode, be sure to share it with somebody that you love in hopes that they can find some inspiration and possibly some motivation to take action in their business. We love hearing from you. Like I said, DMs are always open, and suggestions as to what you need help with in your business so that we can bring that through to you in the podcast. I really hope you love this episode. So tune in as I interview my co-host, RT Custer. Welcome back to the Fast Foundations podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Bergio, with our other main host, RT Custer. How are you, my friend?
Oh, what's up, Jess? I'm stoked to be here.
Oh my God, so am I. Thank you so much for creating this space, this lane for me to be a part of your big vision. And I'm just myself so honored to be here. And I'm excited to get this podcast out into the world for people to get inside your brain, get around other people who want to have big conversations and do big things. So you are now the owner of Fast Foundation's Mastermind. Can you tell us a little bit about the Mastermind and how you came to acquire it?
Yeah. So first of all, you're welcome for the partnership, but also thank you for taking this journey with me. You and I have talked a lot and about this, and I've talked to Jim about all the different things that we need as entrepreneurs. And I think the number one thing that I need is more people like you. So thank you. The story starts with my original company, which is Vortic Watch Company. And, long story short, we take pocket watches and turn them into wristwatches. We started on Kickstarter in 2014, and we are trying to become the American watch company. That's really my thing for Vortic. And I can't remember exactly when. I feel like it was 2018 or so. I was trying to get into influencer marketing. I was trying to send watches to influencers and get them to post about it and hopefully sell a bunch of other watches from that. And I sent it took a couple drinks to work up the courage to send this man a DM because I like looked up to him so much. But I sent Lewis Howes from the School of Greatness a direct message on Instagram. And I said, "Hey, Lewis, I follow you. I've listened to a ton of episodes. I love what you're doing. Huge supporter of all things entrepreneurship, etc. I'd love to make you a watch. I see that you post great pictures of yourself. You like to get dressed up when you go out and do these photo shoots. Can I make you a watch that you can wear for future shoots, but only if you think you would wear it?" And I put that qualifier in there to say, "P.S. Here's what we do. We take old pocket watches, turn them wristwatches. They're all one of a kind. Most of our consumers are American entrepreneurs. And so I think your audience is my audience." Send him this big long message, right? And I mean, within 24 hours, he got back to me personally and was like, "Dude, this is so cool. Thank you. Yes. How does it work?" And so made him a custom watch, took a few months, all that stuff, shipped it to him. He did a super awesome unboxing video talking about Vortic and all why his watch was so cool and how he connected with me on Instagram. And I was a fan of the show. And then that day when he got it, he put it on and wore it to a courtside Lakers game with Chris Harder. And I didn't know Chris Harder at that time. And Chris, and Chris sends me a DM on Instagram and says, "Hey, I'm sitting next to my friend Lewis. He's got this awesome watch on. I'm asking all about it. I'm quizzing him. He doesn't know anything about it. He just got it. I love watches. Tell me everything." And so I connected with Chris Harder and we had a phone call, I think the next day or something like that. And I was going through a bunch of stuff in life and business at that point. I was getting sued by the world's largest watch company.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm telling all this stuff. And Chris is like, "Hey man, like you should join my mastermind. It's called Fast Foundations. Like this would be really cool for you. I think I can teach you a lot. I think you would benefit from a small group of entrepreneurs for accountability and all this stuff." And I was just like, "Well, I'm kind of short on funds. I'm giving a couple watches away to influencers so that I can get some marketing." He's just like, "Well, I'll do a partial trade. Like, Fast Foundations costs a little bit more than the watch, but like maybe we can figure something out." And I was like, "Well, shit." I don't know this man, but he seems cool. And this mastermind concept sounds awesome. And I'd been part of a couple other masterminds, like local things, before. So I got the concept. And yeah, long story short, ended up in Fast Foundations in 2019, partially paid for by a watch, and the rest is history. now I consider Chris and you and all the other Fast Foundations people friends, and Jim and I own the whole program. So it's kind of cool how it all comes full circle.
I love that. And I swear there are so many full circle stories inside the mastermind, inside Fast Foundations that have been created because of one off chances like this, or a moment in time where you meet somebody you would have never otherwise had an opportunity to meet. I mean, the odds that he had the watch on the day that he went and sat next to Chris, and Chris happens to also be a watch connoisseur who then DM'd you, who got you into the program, and then,
Crazy.
into the elite level, and then partnering with Jim, and the whole takeover of the world is happening right before our eyes. Like, holy cow. Like, I love that. And that's one of those things that, in the episode with Jim Carter and I, we really dug into the power of just putting yourself out there and taking that opportunity, that chance. Like, it didn't cost you nothing to make that watch. Like, those watches cost something, but the greater good that you knew that would come out of that investment in that form paid, look at this, dividends. Like, the watch company has blown up into a seven-figure business. Lewis is still one of your guys' biggest clients for the agency. You and Jim are now partners in the agency. You both have now acquired Fast Foundations Mastermind and are taking it to levels of which I doubt Chris and Lori ever even saw possible for it, because it was never their main thing. And I think the passion behind what you see can happen inside masterminds is 10x what I've seen inside other masterminds. Anytime groups of people who have a like mind get together, you see magic happen. It's just facts. And I think so often in the entrepreneurship world, we think we have to figure it all out on our own. So for people who are maybe new to the word mastermind, who have maybe stumbled across this podcast and they're like, Fast Foundations podcast? Like, what is foundations? Like, fast? Okay, I like to get things fast. Like, talk us through what like a mastermind means for you and in the context of like what we're putting together here and what we look to create in the future.
Totally. So I look at a mastermind as simply a group of like-minded individuals working together to help each other solve some shared problem that they all have. And it could be anything from a Facebook group that's full of entrepreneurs, or a Facebook group that's full of a certain, full of watch company owners, right? It's like a Facebook group full of watchmakers, right? The people that, for me, those are the people actually assembling and building these watches. Even just a Facebook group and a virtual connection where people can share their problems and say, "Hey, has anyone seen this before? Has anyone experienced this before? Has anyone used QuickBooks before? This is like really frustrating. Where do I click on to get to this?" Like, it doesn't have to be this huge thing that we are producing in Fast Foundations Mastermind. It can be as simple as just a group of together, either virtually or in person. And that's, my first experience with a mastermind was actually a company called Vistage. And Vistage is the world's largest mastermind group. They have over 20,000 members worldwide, and you have to have a seven-figure business to get in the door. And it's local, like they meet once a month with like up to 12 people for like a whole day. And you lock yourself in this room with 11 other seven-figure business owners, and you sign NDAs and you go deep and you figure out like solving huge problems. And I got invited to go to one, and I didn't quite meet the parameters. My business wasn't quite big enough, but they kept inviting me back, even though I really couldn't afford it. I could be because I was a lot younger than everybody else in the group, and I just look at things a lot differently. And so they really valued my like perspective on things. And I loved sharing that perspective, and also the wisdom and knowledge that I got from these other people who ran big businesses in my area in Colorado was massively valuable. And so when Chris told me about Fast Foundations and all the other stuff that goes into it, it's not just a monthly meeting. It's, two big events on the front and back end, and there's like 50 people in it. And everybody's at the same entry level entrepreneurial like level, I guess. I was like, okay, this is the type of mastermind for me. But yeah, I think you don't have to go to this scale to get the concept of a mastermind. Literally, a mastermind could be you and a couple of other business owners having coffee once a month at Starbucks and just saying, "Hey, what are you working on? And like, how can I help?"
Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing, like there's so many terms now that are getting thrown around so I guess loosely, like mastermind, coaching, business coach, mentor. Like there's so many programs, there's so many everything. And I think while you and I both know that Google University is like the place to go find all the information, being in community with other people where you can ask those quote, I don't know, questions that you think are silly, but are more specific than just Googling it. Like I want someone's Google answer along with insight, along with the backstory as to what they've already tried, how it worked, how it didn't work. It's like almost paying to skip the line because you can get some insight and information from somebody who's maybe already done the thing you are trying to do or that you haven't even thought about doing. So my next question for you is I already know so many ways in which these different masterminds have helped your business in particular. You just shared a great story about how it got you in the door to one even. But can you kind of talk us through maybe how it's in particular helped you and your business? I know that you and Lindsay did the first round of Fast Foundations together, Lindsay being your partner, maybe your better half. I don't know. I'm a girl. Can I say that? No, I'm just kidding. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I would love to just hear like that experience because I'm sure it was different for both of you. You both have different businesses, but in what way do you think Fast Foundations Mastermind helped you the most in your business?
No, honestly, just like thinking about walking in the door to Fast Foundations the first time with Lindsay, she was we're both serial entrepreneurs, and she was working on a few different businesses. I was kind of helping her with some of the things she was doing. She's always been a voice of reason for me with Vortic and now my agency stuff. And walking in there as life partners, and we both agreed like it's easier to just call her baby mama. Like
I love
let's call it what it is. Like
yes.
she has birthed two humans that look like me, and I am their father. And so Lindsay, the baby mama, the girlfriend, the partner, the life partner, the advisor, she's absolutely my better half. She and I decided to do Fast Foundations together because we really just wanted friends. We live here in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is a beautiful place. It's always top 5 in like places to live in the country, but it's a small place. I don't know how many people live here, but I was in that Vistage group, which was great. But even those 7 and 8 figure business owners sitting in that room once a month, they were not thinking as big as I was thinking. They had local HVAC companies or plumbing companies or restaurant groups. And while that's awesome, I'm trying to grow an international $100 million+ wristwatch manufacturing empire. And I was just thinking bigger, and I have a lot more runway. At that time I was in my mid 20s. So I was just like, all right, guys, like, all right, let's just go. Why is this taking so long? And so I wanted friends that thought like me, and she did too. And I think that's the thing that people don't talk about when they talk about coaches, masterminds, all this stuff. It's hard to find people like you, people like Jim, people like Chris Harder. Just get it. They think like us. They're not torn down by the negativity of the media and the world. And they're not afraid of failure. We just jump, we just go. And if I can, and if we could, and this was the thought, if we could surround ourselves with 48 other people, because Chris Harder said, hey, there's going to be 50 people in this room. They're all like you. That was the big selling point. I was like, there's probably 1 or 2 of them that think like us, that might be cool, that we could be friends with, and we could be accountability buddies. And that was our true motivation for maxing out the credit cards and putting all online and joining Fast Foundation Mastermind the first time. And we got that. I mean, we have in Jim, especially lifelong friends, now business partners, but that accountability, camaraderie, just the surrounding yourself with other people like you is my why, and still honestly will always be my why for masterminds in general.
Hey, I'm so glad you're here joining us for the launch of the Fast Foundations podcast. I have an opportunity that can massively change your business. When I joined the very first round of the Fast Foundations Mastermind, I felt stuck in my business because I didn't know what I didn't know. All I knew is I wanted access to more tools to scale my business, more examples of what's possible, and more like-minded entrepreneurs looking for the same. The next round of Fast Foundations Mastermind starts this September. This 6-month in-person mastermind was built for you. Join the next group of entrepreneurs that go from idea to owning their own business, from burnt out to having solid systems in place. We can't wait to see you in one of those seats. For more information, click the link in our show notes or just head to fastfoundations.com to learn more about this round and future opportunities we have coming up. Well, if you guys haven't had a chance to listen to the last episode, which was one of our first episodes with Jim Carter, I shared in that episode a very, very similar story as to what motivated me to join as well, because same thing, San Diego doesn't seem like a very small place to live, but in the beauty industry community at the level I was playing at, it is. And I think there's times when people like us, and if you're listening, find yourself in the story, we want more, even though we have something really great going on already. You may already be making 6 figures in your business, or at a place in your business where you feel comfortable. You've kind of made it, if you will, in your space. And that feels good for a while. And most people who get to that point in business and life know that there's more for them. They have these big ideas that they haven't shared with anybody else because they don't feel safe talking about it, because people will be like, oh, that's crazy, you could never do that. Or why would you want to do that? Or that sounds like so much work, I can't believe you'd even consider that. Or in my case, the multiple businesses that I run, people are like, what are you actually even doing? And I'm like, you don't worry about it. It's for me to know. But when I share what I'm doing with people like you and in the groups like I did with the mastermind, Nobody ever laughs at me, questions me, at least in a negative way. They might question, like, do you need help with this? Or have you thought about this? They encourage me to think bigger and play bigger. It's almost like the big ideas I think I have are not even close to big enough. They just blow them out of the water. Same with when you and I talk about the goals that we have for Fast Foundations and what we want to do with the mastermind and the ability to help more people than just 50 at a time. It's insane. And anybody else listening would be like, these two are off their rocker. But it takes creative big thinkers to bring new ideas to fruition. And that is the exact same reason why I joined Fast Foundations was I had hoped to acquire 2 to 3 new high level friends. I didn't think they'd be my best friends. I didn't think I'd be in business with them now like I am with Jim and you. And I met you by way of Jim. You know, Regina Lawrence is one of my dearest best friends, Kiki Scheipel. I mean, and I would like to consider the majority of the other people I've met to be my friends, maybe not super close, but if I needed something or if I had a question, I now have a direct bat line to them. Hey, Shannon Weinstein, who makes almost a half a million a year in her tax business, I have a question. Can you help me with? I was thinking about, would you mind if I, referred somebody to you? There is this unspoken now bond between anyone who's ran through a program like this that doesn't live anywhere else. And so that power, like it's something you have to experience. And, you know, even if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur or stepping into the entrepreneur space, like wouldn't it have been so cool if we had this information at the very start of our entrepreneurial career? Like I look back and think, ugh, if only I had known half the shit 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Mind you, online marketing is different than it is now. That's why it's so cool to me that you and Jim are taking the reins over from Chris and Lori, who did a great job setting us up, setting you guys up with the foundations of the program. But there's ongoing things that change every single quarter, every single month, even with how you can be doing things and how to better double down on what's already working in your business. And that's why having the connection to this is so important. So obviously you heard how it's helped you professionally. Personally, I think it's really freaking cool that you and Lindsay did this together because so often if one person in the household is an entrepreneur and the other person is not, it's almost like they're speaking two different languages. And I've found in coaching through Fast Foundations the last couple of years that the entrepreneur has the harder time going back home sharing the things that they're going through or talking about things with, say, someone who's in corporate who has a very structured routine and doesn't get room for play and ideas, and the stress isn't really on them to make decisions like an entrepreneur has to make. How has doing this together helped your guys' personal relationship?
Great question. So it it actually hurt first
Ooh.
before it helped. And that's the magic in it, in the process. And I would say, that was 2019 that we experienced Fast Foundations together. And then most of her businesses were in person. She ran an in-person mastermind, she ran a yoga studio. And so obviously 2020, 2021 were not good for her and her businesses. And the skills that we learned and the relationships we developed in Fast Foundations and having all of those connections, because to your point, like you have so many opinions, you have so many ideas, you have so much collaborative thought. So when she experienced a lot of hardship in 2020, and I actually experienced, so early 2020, I experienced a lot of loss. I lost my mom. I I was winning a legal battle with the world's largest watch company, which we won now, thank God. But I went to federal court in Manhattan, February 19 of 2020,
Mhm.
got COVID, like variation one, like the OG variant on the plane on the way back, was the sickest I was ever been because I was super unhealthy then. I wasn't eating well. I was so stressed about everything and experienced that loss. Lost my mom in March of 2020, and then thought I was going to lose my business to the pandemic, because why would you buy a luxury wristwatch on the internet during a global pandemic? There was just so much of a roller coaster for both of us and both of our business, all this stuff. And so we kind of like separated, in terms of, she was focused on her stuff, I was focused on my stuff. I tried to help, but we had all these skills and we just wanted to hustle on our own things and we didn't really know what to do. And then the core skills, like the foundational stuff, and that's why it's called Fast Foundations, is like, let's teach the foundation stuff really fast so you can, to your point, know all these things that you wish you would have known before. When we started actually applying the things that we learned and actually reaching out for those connections and helping all that stuff, she went on this awesome inner work journey, which in some ways was sparked by some of the ideas we got from Fast Foundations, like from Lori Harder. Lori did this awesome breath work session when we were there. And there was like super, and like, I was like, this woo-woo shit is not for me. Like, what is happening?
Right.
But Lindsay loves that stuff and she went all in on that stuff. And her getting into that woo-woo stuff and doing a lot of inner work throughout 2020 and 2021 inspired me to also do it. We went through, I mean, we also have two little, they were babies at that time. Wes and Sawyer were real little. That, there was just so much turmoil in our business and our personal life, all that stuff is very difficult for us. But then when we actually focused on a relationship, like it's a business, honestly, we joke about it, and a true partnership, and we did that inner work stuff together. And like, I went to couples therapy. I went to therapy myself. I lost my mom. Like, fucking sit on a couch and talk about it, man. Like, I needed to do that for myself. Once that journey concluded, now we're the strongest we've ever been as a partnership. And now we're both doing other masterminds at a much higher level. Her mastermind is insane. It's 3 times the price of Chris Harder's elite mastermind. And I thought that was the most expensive one I knew of, so it's like, once you get this propensity for like, I just have to be part of a mastermind, I have to be part of these groups, and you realize how much they help and how much those little things you get taught in these masterminds and these connections you make are so beneficial. And then you apply it to your personal life and do all that stuff too. And you do the work with your spouse. It's just, I mean, yeah, I could talk about that for an entire episode. It's
Mm.
changed my life and her life and our life as a family.
That's amazing. And I have seen several couples go through the program together, or I've seen people go through it individually, and then next round their husband's in it, or the next round their wife is in it. And we have somebody currently in the group right now who I remember during the first in person. I remember listening to him intro himself, and I asked him what he was hoping to get out of the weekend when we had the last in person in Arizona. And he was very nonchalant and very kind of just told a story of how his wife loved it and it was amazing. And he just figured, he would show up and see what was for him. And I could hear the undertone of like, I doubt anything, like not an ego based way, but really just I don't see how this is going to help what I do. He's in real estate, just to give some context. And by the end of the 2 days, I think he, out of the group, was one of the top like 3 people I feel had the most mindset transformation around what is possible, because clearly he had only been hanging out with other real estate agents having the same conversations, doing the same things that may be working really well, but wow, what if I implemented this, or what if I added this? So I can only imagine the powerful conversation he got to go home to his wife and have, and how they probably geeked out and laughed and talked about all these things and shared some really cool stories that, if only one of you is doing the work, it's really hard to go back and like it's like you're speaking a foreign language and you come home,
Right.
because you now know all these things, and your excitement level is at a 10 when you leave the in-persons from our events. And you go home to someone who's like, oh wow honey, that's cool, so when's dinner? It's like, that's it's one of the other reasons why that's so cool and so neat to do. So thank you for sharing that story, and thank you for talking about it wasn't always easy. And just because you got to give Lewis a watch and then meet Chris Harder and then get put into the group, that it wasn't all like rainbows and sprinkles all the way through and your business just took off and everything's been, super easy ever since. No, you just shared a very profound story that a lot of people experienced during 2019, 2020 into 2021. In the beauty industry where I come from, we were down. Like that was one of those things where it was like, what the fuck, what's next? And I was so grateful at the time that I had just been 1 year out of Fast Foundations Mastermind, because I was like, whoop, yeah, here's where now you have the room and the runway to implement all these things that you learned. And
Yep.
I was so grateful because I again, like you, went for the friends, and I went for the encouragement and the confidence. I opened the salon during the time when I was in the group. I started my first in-person networking event. I then, during the closure, I had opened my salon. 6 months later, we closed. I had the space and freedom to start the podcast. And you know, it's not all been rainbows and sunshine. It's been a lot of hard work, trial and error. Sometimes you think you want to lean into one thing and then that doesn't feel right, so you have to kind of make pivots and change and move around. But having the space, the safe space that we create in this group available to me anytime, and to see what other people are going through and to be able to ask those questions of like, how is it really? Thank you for
Right.
sharing that story, because that's how it was really for you guys. That sounds like a really tough time, especially with two little kids like that. Anybody with children, I'm a mom too. Mine's 10 and a half now, but that shit is hard. And it was for me one of those times where I had wished my partner at the time would have gone and experienced it too. He was an entrepreneur at the time too, but he had no interest in any of that. And that was one of the things that ended up separating us, because when you have big goals and dreams on your heart, you need a support system. Now, I'm not telling everybody needs to get divorced if their husband or wife doesn't agree to them, do whatever. Your person doesn't have to be the end all be all, but if you have a spirit like we do and you get this excited about things, it is wonderful to have somebody who at least understands it and is open to the conversations, right?
Mhm. And I've met your new person, and it
Yes.
seems like you got a significant upgrade because he's fucking awesome.
Hell yeah.
Um,
And what's really, really cool is he's so open to what we talk about. And I find him trying to like listen to what I'm saying and apply it in the way he shows up as a leader in his business. And I think
yeah.
because he's around someone like me, when I met him, he had a job that he was coasting through. He'd been in that position for about 8 years. If you had to ask him, it was a cakewalk. Things were good. And then about 4 months into our relationship, someone approached him about a promotion. And he was like, I don't really think I want it. Sounds like a shit ton of work. I'm gonna have to lead like 10 times more people. And I was like, what's wrong with that? You could do that. So the encouragement from me, because I have the mindset of like, okay, go for it. What's the worst that's gonna happen? You go back to your old job? You're living in your
Right.
worst case scenario right now. And he was like, And so the change I've seen in him over the last year, because he had somebody who was supporting him, toot toot, I'll toot my own horn,
Yeah.
like,
You should.
it's he's now vying for his next boss's job, and the things that come out of his mouth and the way that he supports me and doing all this kind of stuff is it's really next level. But it also goes back to the mindset that I learned in Fast Foundations around creating boundaries in my life and teaching other people how to treat me. When you come from a service-based business like I did, you are more of a giver. You're a people pleaser. You always want to make sure everyone else is happy and their cups are full before yours. You very rarely spend as much time taking care of yourself and making sure your bucket's filled up. And so that is something I learned how to do in this group. And I watched by example other people doing the same thing. And you're very protective with your schedule. And I've even learned in the last couple of weeks, like, how to better manage my time and to be more communicative with the team. And being part of a team is something I haven't gotten to do in a really long time. So I think all of that's super helpful, and things that I've also taken away from the group as well. Okay, so let's dive into, do you still keep in touch with people that you were in that round in Fast Foundations with? Do you have any friends from there? I think we spoke about creating friends, but do you have any buddies besides Jim that you still keep in touch with?
Yeah, we have a couple, and obviously Jim. Well, I mean, we're business partners now, so and that runs deep. I think because Chris, as the leader of Fast Foundations at that time, would always like call on Jim and call out Jim for like being like the tech guy.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of tech problems at that time, so I just remember like, okay, when I need a tech related thing, like I'm gonna call Jim. And there's a couple other like connections like that I made. But then there was also my friend Andy, who lives here in Fort Collins as well. And Andy, like we didn't really know each other well, and then we joined Fast Foundations together and became even more friends. And thank you for this reminder. I haven't talked to him a little bit. I'm going to be like, Andy, let's go play golf and catch up, man. What are you doing? But there's people like that you probably wouldn't have met, and I wouldn't have met, had I not joined Fast Foundations, had I not gone on an airplane and went to a mastermind, an in-person mastermind that was like somewhere else in this place called Scottsdale, which I didn't realize how freaking amazing that place was. And there's a bunch of people that I've been able to I guess that concept of like you meet someone at an event, you follow them on Instagram or Facebook, and then you like feel like you're watching their life unfold in front of you. Like there's a ton of people like that I've been like reconnecting with as I go. And through some of these masterminds, I've ancillary met people like Kyle Depius, who like, he puts on these awesome guys trips, and he was now in our elite mastermind. And Kyle's just like blown my mind in terms of creating these other smaller groups and containers that I can like hang out with other like-minded men. And it's all about like, I mean, he literally calls it guys trip. So the people are amazing. And I have some of those long-lasting connections, especially like Jim and business partners, stuff like that. But to your earlier point, the things that I've learned and I've seen other people do is just so inspiring. And watching all these other people and seeing that they're just out there, the thing that they said they were going to start working on in 2019 when I met them, now it's just crushing it. Yeah, or at least it seems so. And I'm just so like proud of them, even though we're still, I wouldn't say like friends, but like we're obviously like internet friends. And I think you also mentioned, and this is really cool, if I needed anything from someone like that, or if like you or I or Jim are in a dire situation, we need help, 90% of that room is going to come. They're going to figure it out. They're going to help. They're going to find a way. They're at least going to connect us to someone else that they know, because we had those. I mean, really, when you think about it, it was like 5 days in person together total. But that's a lot. Like we accomplished a lot in those few days.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the those friendships, and I guess what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't discount the acquaintances and the ancillary connections, like the friends of friends and that next level. Because for me, that's where I got the massive benefit, is that like friends of friends of like, hey, this person, you talked about accounting. It's like, this person is an accountant, need like a very specific type of accountant. Do you know anyone that does that? And they're like, oh yeah, I know like 3 people that do that. Awesome. It was just a question, but now they solved a massive problem in my business. And it's that like pass it down line effect. That's so cool, to like maybe ripple effect of it all, that I just love.
Seriously. And I think what's wonderful too is like now we can move into the subject of community, because that is so huge for you and I, and a huge part of what Fast Foundations is all about and why we started this podcast. This podcast is to help grow our community, but also to bring you into the community, the listener. And that is why we have an open door policy here. Well, it's really an open DM policy, but we want to hear from you what it is that you need in order to feel supported in your business, or your business you don't even have yet. What would get you to start taking action if you had the support? And that's where I think I see the little light bulbs going off with you and Jim, you especially, around what do people need? I want to help people solve problems. And I know in community, if I don't have the answer, it's not like you're RT, I now own Fast Foundations, I have all the answers. You're like, no, I am going to put the right people together so that we can all figure out the right answer and the right to those questions together. And I think that is the power of community. Can you touch a little bit more on what the importance of community means for you personally?
Yeah, I think it's that concept, and the word mastermind applies to this by definition in my mind too. But it's that concept of, as the tide rises, all ships rise. And I get to try to rise the tide as the leader. Like, I am not, to your point, an expert. I don't like it when people call me like I'm a consumer product expert. And Chris does that when I'm in the mastermind. There's like, if you need to know about consumer products and launching a business on Shopify, go to RT. It's like, I mean, sure, but I'm probably going to connect you to someone who's way better than I am. I like being that breadth of knowledge and knowing a little bit about a bunch of things and experiencing a bunch of different things and meeting a bunch of different people, so that I can be like the Rolodex guy. Like, if you need this type of thing, well, let me go bring that person in to speak to the group. Let me go find a person, and my episodes of this podcast will be interviewing people like Chris Harder that run other masterminds. And honestly, that's going to be like public coaching. Like, I'm going to say, hey, Chris, what do you do when you're running your mastermind. And I'm gonna steal all that information and bring it to Fast Foundations and say like, hey, Chris said this thing. That's awesome. We're gonna do that now. And that's like that whole concept of as the tide rises, all ships rise. Because him hearing me say that, I'm gonna tell him that, and he's gonna be like, sweet, and he's gonna share more now because we all believe the same thing. And that's with this community. Not only do we have those friendships and we have those ancillary connections that we get, but we also have accountability. We have people that instead of saying, oh yeah, that's a great idea, you should totally do that, they say like, well, the last time I talked to you, or the last time you spoke in front of the whole group, you said this and this, and that seems different than what you're saying today. So just a quick challenge and question: are you working on the right thing, RT? And no one's gonna call you out. Even coach, you pay a lot of money. They're literally getting paid to tell you what you want to hear. Mastermind groups, it's that like, no, but that's not what you said. Like, I'm going to help you. The point is to help you, because if they help me, I'll probably help them someday too. It's all going to come back. So that to me is the community. It's fostering the community. My role is just trying to get the right people in the right seats, get the right people on Zoom, on their monthly Zoom calls, to teach the right things. This past month, both of our calls were about money. Everybody's stressed about money. What's the recession going to do? All this stuff. So we talked about money. It's like, here's some pro tips. There's some quick things you can go do to protect your business, to go get financing, all that stuff. Like, that's what the people need right now. So we brought in people into the community that could share about that. And that, I feel like, is my role as just, that's what Chris always did. And Chris and Lori and Nick, let's not forget about Nick. Nick was the one actually like operationally getting that stuff happening. They passed me and Jim the torch, and now we get to serve just like they did and be the bridge between. For most people, it's they join Fast Foundation so they can go from 5 or 6 figures to 7 figures, like I have, like Jim has, like Chris has. If I can be just a small part of that, my journey in building this community is it's so rewarding. It's amazing watching that happen.
That's amazing. So, what can people expect from listening to the podcast with us? I know for me, I'm going to be bringing in past alumni who have gone through the program just to share what it's been like for them, the wins that they've had, maybe things that didn't work out the way they thought they would, conversational stories like this, sharing how they've been able to do XYZ, or maybe they thought they were going to do one thing and then now it's going to be another. What can guests expect listening in the future of, I know you touched on interviewing other mastermind leaders. What can they hope to gain from that? I know we're going to steal some info from Chris on what he would do with this and that, but can we dig into that a little bit?
Absolutely. So yeah, I see 3 episode types. It's the ones that you're doing, interviewing alumni and just documenting their stories. Hopefully that's inspirational to people, and say like, okay, you came from the beauty industry and now you're doing this. Okay, he's running a watch company. That's kind of weird. Like, I never heard of that. Like, but that means that I can probably sell, this other widget. Like, if he can sell a watch to people that don't need a watch, I can probably sell water bottles to people that actually need to put water in something, like that. Hopefully those documented stories of all the past mastermind alumni is either inspirational or just thought provoking, like that those stories I think will be awesome. And that's your episode type. And then for me, I want to interview everybody that I can find that runs other masterminds. 1, to pick their brain about how we can optimize Fast Foundations mastermind, but 2, to give people other options and say, Fast Foundations is great, and it's a great place to start, but it's for entry-level entrepreneurs. It's people that are making, tens of thousands a year to hundreds of thousands a year. But if you're making millions a year in your business, you probably want to join something like Chris Harder's Elite Mastermind or Ezra Firestone's Blue Ribbon Mastermind. There's so many, and people don't even know. And so I think that's part of my journey is like, let me just document, let me put a landing page together of like literally every other mastermind on the planet, so that if Fast Foundations doesn't really sound right to you, or you can't afford it, or it's not the level that you're at, there's 60 other options. It's going to take a while, but that's the plan for that one. And then the third episode type is, we're going to call it Carter and Custer, because that's the name of our agency. It's going to be me and Jim shooting the shit, trying to help people, trying to serve, talking about very specific things that we are, at least, I wouldn't say expert at, but we are very passionate about. So, like, I will interview Jim and say, "Hey, Jim, you're a tech guy. Should I use Kajabi or WordPress for the base of my website?" I don't know, so that's going to be helpful for a very specific subset of people. And so we're going to share that. He'll interview me and say, "Okay, RT, I'm making a physical product. Everybody talks about Shopify. What are the other options besides Shopify? Shopify is kind of expensive and there's a lot of development. What else can I do?" And so I'll share a lot about that. So many examples that we can go into, but more of like shorter form, kind of just answering the public, like answering other questions that people have. And talking about those questions that we get from our mastermind community.
Right. And that leads me into the resource library that we're going to continue to grow. I think I don't know if the listeners are really understanding the amount of value that's about to get dumped on them from this podcast alone, because this is the kind of magic that you have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get answers like this, or to get inside two men who are at that high level having these conversations, and you're literally going to have someone picking their brain on very specific ways as to which they got to where they are. Now, I know there's millions of podcasts out in the world that also do something similar, right? We share stories and backstories and how did people get from A to Z and all of that. But this is, again, for those earlier stage entrepreneurs who are looking for more structure and strength in their foundations to grow that dream, the business, pivot, change, add on, go from a one-man entrepreneur show to building a team. And I think, again, like, being inspired through the past alumni stories, but then also getting, that real nitty gritty answers, Kajabi or Teachable, like, what platform should I use for this? And, though it's not a coaching session, right? You can't necessarily ask straight up questions. If you're listening to a podcast, you can submit those through a review on the podcast once we launch. And so we ask that you do that, leave us a review. And then in the review, you can leave a nice review if you love the podcast episode, but also ask your questions in there so we can pull questions from that in order to best serve you as things start to come up in your life and your business. RT, are there any final words we want to leave them? I know I sometimes feel in podcast episodes like it's the end all, but I'm like, oh, but we get to do this again next week.
Yeah, I would just say I'm really just excited and renewed excitement about this whole idea, having this conversation with you. But we're just getting started. I mean, this is one of the first few episodes that we're going to launch with, and there's so much value that's going to come from documenting the stories of all of our past alumni, which we have, like 350. So it's going to take you a long time if we're only doing one a week, but I think it's absolutely worth it. And there's so many stories there. But I would say the difference between this podcast and the Fast Foundations community and the Fast Foundations mastermind, the whole Fast Foundations brand, if you think of like your ideal customer archetypes, there's a bunch of different ways you can think about that. But for me, I've decided to I want to go all in on being that contextual storyteller and being the case study archetype instead of the influencer or content creator. So when you look at archetypes, you could be a content creator. If you want to be a podcast, content creator, or you could be that case study. And what we're focused on, everything that we do is a case study. I'm a case study. You're a case study. Everyone you interview is a case study. Everyone that we interview for that runs other masterminds is a case study. None of us are making any of this shit up. None of us are just like telling stories about like what we would do or what you should do. We're not coaching anyone. We're saying, here's what worked for me. Come with me on the journey to discover the next new thing that might work for us. And that's, to me, the why is documenting all of those awesome case studies and sharing them with people for free to hopefully get something in return, because we know this for a fact: when the tide rises, all ships rise.
I love that. That's so powerful. And if you guys have any questions, like we said earlier, the DMs are always open. You can shoot RT a message, myself, Jim Carter, anybody on the team. I mean, straight to the Fast Foundation's website. We are so excited to bring you all this insight and to have these conversations so that things seem easier and more accessible to you because they are. They really are. If I can go from behind the chair as a hairdresser into full-time podcasting and running a community of epic entrepreneurs, like anything's possible. If RT can go from starting his watch company to now owning 3 7-figure businesses in just a short couple of years, mind you, there's hard work involved. Yep, no one's lying to you over here, but it is all possible. And it's so much more fun when you're in community with each other. So tune in every week. There's multiple episodes. We're doing 2 a week right now. I'm sure, according to RT and I, there'll be 12 episodes a week at one point.
Who knows?
No, who knows? So we hope you guys get a ton of value out of this. If you did, please share it with somebody else who also loves listening to podcasts and just getting the behind the scenes look at what's really going on in life and business. We're just here to support you and help you grow on your journey into figuring out the next thing and taking that next action step in your business. So we're sending you so much love, and we'll see you on the next one.